So Rohit, this one's for you, right? And specifically for those Indians who are already in the US, this is a question whose answer will kind of help them understand more from a decision-making standpoint, right? So the ones who are in the US, they can file the adjustment of status as an application, right? To help them prioritize the quality of the project versus making a skewed decision due to visa trends and expected backlogs. So how do you kind of prioritize these is what I would want.
Do you mean selection of projects?
Yes.
So first of all, I don't advise on selection of projects. I don't have an SEC license. I don't have a FINRA license. And I think I say that to the clients probably ad nauseum in writing, and I repeat it every time I say something. My only advice to people who are filing an AOS is I tell them, look at the project, look at the vertical, look at things that you like. Don't just go blindly into rural. Let's leave the visas and the quotas aside. That's not so important, in my opinion, because I try to take a holistic point of view in terms of their perspective and say, look, you're in the United States. Don't just see if it's a rural project. Also look to see what are you more comfortable with in terms of getting your money back, because that's your true success, right? At the end of the day, you get your green card and you get your money back. What are you more comfortable with? If you're in the US and you're filing your AOS, yeah, it will probably take you longer to get the green card. But it's going to take you the same amount of time to get the EAD and the advanced parole. Those are your green card benefits. What else are you really looking for? So take a slightly more holistic perspective. That's the only advice I give them. That doesn't mean that they necessarily follow it. I don't even know if that's necessarily correct. It's what I just truly believe in. So I think that's something that they should be looking at. And I think just in terms of the return of monies, the HUAs have clearly got a longer history of doing it than the rurals have not had a history. I also believe that it's going to take 5 years to get the money back, which means fall of 2027 for the first rural cases, unless there are some that might have returned it earlier, but that's my general guideline.
And just to conclude this, I'd say that very happy and privileged to be a part of US Immigration Fund, Edwin, like you and I, where we have the opportunity and the access where we can offer investors a rural, a HUA, and an infrastructure project, which then gives us the opportunity to actually have an unbiased perspective and guidance when speaking to prospective investors. And so, we tell all our investors when they're looking at projects of USIF that we have all categories. Feel free to take a look at the pros and cons and decide what's best for you.
Yeah, true. Going back to that, what we see is that the data suggests that out of the total HUA applications that got adjudicated, Indian cases were 39%, whereas Chinese cases were 18.63%. And the opposite in case of rural applications, right? Adjudicated Indian cases were 25.53, whereas Chinese cases were 59.3, right? And this is more as a question to all. For a prospective Indian EB-5 investor, after hearing about this data and trend, which category should he or she choose, keeping possible retrogression versus processing timelines in mind?
It's an easy question, right? Look, it's at the heart of the selection process that investors face.
Right.
It is really the bullseye. So great question. The problem is it's a nuanced, multi-layered answer.
Yeah.
Starting with the risk profile of the family involved, starting with the immigration goals. If they are planning on moving to the United States to retire, or they're planning on using the EB-5 program to ensure that successful technology worker is able to stay with his or her family in the United States. So the goals are different. Rural versus urban has been a very classic conversation since the categories were created in 2022. I think the real unicorn is the infrastructure category, because it has hardly been used. It will remain available when other categories are exhausted, or at least potentially backlogged, particularly for China, for example, and perhaps for India. We don't know.
Yeah.
So the promise of the infrastructure category is incredibly attractive. It's just that there have been so few projects on it. So we're looking forward to maybe a project really making that happen. And I think it will be very attractive in the market.
So, Ignacio, I have a question for you. Your thought on this, and this is as subjective as it gets. Infrastructure projects, as we're talking about, very few. Now they're in the market. There's no priority processing over there, which means they're kind of on par with high unemployment. But considering the government is involved in infrastructure projects, what's your gut feeling on the soft issue of possible backdoor government intervention or blessing to kind of move a project along faster?
It's an interesting question. It's an interesting question.
When to transition into my next segment?
Or maybe you just know my thought process.
Well, to answer your question, infrastructure projects not only have this status as being able to capture the 200 visas per year with a rollover for unused visas into the next year, 400 visas potentially in total.
Correct.
Not only do they have that, but the key point is that if it qualifies as an infrastructure project, it may very well qualify under the USCIS guidelines for expedited processing. And that's not so much let's say a backdoor effort, but rather a straightforward criteria-based application for USCIS discretion to adjudicate the 956F more quickly, meaning the project application, and the attached 526E petitions. And I think it's a very reasonable request. If you're truly promoting an infrastructure project investment, there's a strong public purpose to what this particular project is doing.
Completely agreed. But that's exactly why maybe my use of the word backdoor was wrong, because this is a straightforward expedite request, which is usually supported by somebody in the congressional area or somebody who's got an interest in promoting it.
Yeah.
So the public interest is supported by somebody who's a little higher up than an attorney. So that was one of the thoughts that I kept having with the infrastructure project.
Yeah, I think it could be a game changer, 100%.